The Texas Kid is wild, roguish, and mysterious, and you're going to learn all about him today on Comicology. The thing that I love about the Golden Age is that many of its characters only made single appearances. They failed to catch on, and then they were subsequently erased from comic book history forever. That is certainly the case with the Texas Kid, who only ever made one appearance and then just kind of disappeared. As any fan of comic books knows, the Golden Age was a learning period for creators. They were often literally trying anything to see what would stick. Of course, the Texas Kid did not stick. I like to think of it like just some random hero coming down from the mountains, saving somebody, and then just riding off into the sunset, never to be seen again. And for the rest of comic book history, everybody's just sort of like, hey, do you remember that guy? No, I don't. But of course, Westerns. Westerns were a huge part of the culture back in the 40s. And of course, that culture would seep into comic books. They were no exception. But there's a vast difference between good Westerns and bad Westerns. See, good Westerns can be inspiring. Bad Westerns can be very depressing. So which is the Texas Kid? I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. Let's take a look. The Texas Kid made his first and only appearance in Daring Mystery Comics #1 as a way to gauge the interest in Western stories for the title. The story takes place in 1879 in a place known as Red Rim, California. This is the location of the Texas Kid's debut. Like a true Western hero, he appears, defeats some bad guys, and then disappears into the sunset, never to be seen again. The problem in this section of the world just happens to be a roaming band of outlaws who get their kicks by going from ranch to ranch and taking out the families that live there and then burning them alive. So yeah, that's some pretty serious violence, especially for a comic book, especially for a Golden Age book. But I kind of like it because it paints the characters as a serious threat for the Texas Kid to take on, and it definitely raises the stakes of the story. The story starts off with the Texas Kid riding along when he comes upon a ranch that's burning to the ground. He is able to save one of the ranchers who tells him that the fire was started by a band of masked raiders. The Texas Kid finds the green hat that one of the masked raiders had and comes up with a brilliant plan. He's going to wear the hat into town and see if any of the hidden raiders recognizes him. Unfortunately, this actually works and he ends up held at gunpoint. Luckily, the Texas Kid is an amazing gunfighter and wrestles himself free of the raiders. He makes his escape and finds a place to hide and then decides to come back for a counterattack at night. He smashes the lantern in the raiders' hideout and then takes back the rancher's stolen money in the cover of the darkness. He then makes his way to the Humboldt Ranch, which the raiders were planning on attacking next, and fortunately, the rancher there agrees to help him fend off the raiders. So an interesting thing about the Texas Kid, which may be an aspect of the fact that he's a comic book character as opposed to a film or radio serial character, is that so far we've seen him take on the raiders in non-violent ways. He hasn't actually killed anybody. And I actually love this because it's way more interesting than what would happen in a more generic Western, which would be a more generic gunfight. It's so much more interesting. Here, let me show you. The raiders show up at the ranch, and the rancher turns tail and hands over the money. The raiders make off with the money without a fight and head back to their hideout. The Texas Kid, who was watching, follows them. Then the rancher, on order of the Texas Kid, takes a secret message and tosses it into the city bank. The banker takes the secret message and decides to go meet the raiders at the hideout. Then the rancher goes off to the sheriff and pulls him into the plan. Meanwhile, we see the Texas Kid is tracking the raiders to their hideout. Then, either purposefully or accidentally, the Texas Kid gets captured by the raiders and is taken back to their hideout. After some time, the banker shows up to make the exchange, and with the sheriff watching, he catches them in the act. It turns out the banker was secretly the leader of the gang, and he was having ranches burned down in order to cash in on their mortgages. Then the Texas Kid leaves, never to be seen again. That's it. That's it. He saves everybody and rides off, never to be seen again. But I think it's really cool how he did it without actually killing anybody. He captures the gang and saves all the ranch without ever actually killing anybody. In fact, he almost never even fires his weapon. In fact, the only person who dies in the story is the rancher from the opening scene, who was killed by the raiders. It's crazy. It makes me wonder, was this done by design? It's very interesting since this comic book is from the Golden Age, which predates the Comics Code Authority by at least, what, like 2 decades? Something to think about. So what do you guys think? Do you guys like the Texas Kid? He was never actually published again, at least not under this name. A little hint, he does have a little bit more history, but that's going to have to be explored in a different video under a different name as a different hero. But the Texas Kid, as far as the Texas Kid is concerned, he was never published again. He just ended up lost in a scramble of what was, God, dozens of other Western heroes that existed at the time. But for what it's worth, I enjoyed this little piece of comic book history. Be sure to come back and read more comics with me again. You can like this and subscribe. No, you know what? Don't do that. Don't do that. I don't need that. I do it for the love of the books.